Three, two, one.
Welcome to another Lip Conversation. I am so grateful for your time and so grateful for your attention. And I really do hope that you're finding these conversations to be helpful, inspiring, and useful. So let me bring on my guest. There we go. How you doing, Jimmy?
I'm good, Junior. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to do this. How's my audio? Are we good?
Yeah, you're good. I can hear you perfectly well.
Awesome.
Yeah, I feel like we've been talking about this for almost a year.
Oh, yeah. I was telling my wife the other day about how we first met. We were at the Brakeman's Coffee Shop in Matthews, and I actually went there to speak with somebody, to meet with someone else. And I think we were sitting at tables beside each other. And then after we were done, I overheard you talking about marketing. And next thing you know, we had a conversation that lasted for probably 30 or 45 minutes.
Absolutely. So I always like to start this conversation by giving a little bit of context to the audience, because I know every new guest brings in a new audience that might not be privy of what these conversations are.
Yeah.
So LEAP is a series of conversations that I started last year about the courage and the belief required to take a leap of faith in pursuit of a dream. And I've had wonderful conversations with people with different stories, pursuing various dreams. And when I created this, it was really to help other people take similar leap of faith, but I didn't anticipate just how useful and impactful this conversation would be for me. So now it has almost become a selfish thing as well, to have this conversation. So Jimmy, help people then understand who you are. Like, I'm always fascinated by the pieces of people's life story that they choose to tell a coherent story about themselves. So what are the pieces of your life story that would best help us understand you as a human being?
Well, I grew up in Virginia, and I had a teacher in 7th grade. It was my English teacher. And I love writing. I love creating content. I love writing. I love doing videos and things now too. But I had this teacher in 7th grade, and she told my mom at a parent-teacher conference that I was a very strong writer, and she was very impressed with the work that I was creating. And she said, she told my mom, and my mom passed this along to me, that I was going to make a difference in the world one day. So there was always that pressure to make an impact in the world. And I think in the different careers that I've had over the years, it's always been in an effort to make an impact. So I went to school at the University of Virginia. I graduated in 2000. Tells you a little bit about my age. And I was a government and political science major there. Didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up. Had the opportunity to work in 2 governor's administrations in Virginia, and I was the proclamation writer. So whenever you had such and such a day, I got to be the one to write that, and I got to work closely with the press secretary in the media office. So that was a learning experience. And I eventually found my way into real estate. So interestingly, at the end of the first administration that I was working with, and it was a non-political role and probably the least political office, even though there were political appointees that always filled the positions. The first governor that I worked for was a Republican. The second one was a Democrat. And the second one is actually a U.S. Senator, Mark Warner, who's been a U.S. Senator for, 15 years or so. But at the end of the first administration, when everyone was trying to figure out what they were going to do next, our director had us do this exercise where we wrote on a piece of paper what we thought everyone else should do. And a couple of people put realtor down, and I had never even considered that at that point. But they said I had the personality of a realtor. So I ended up deciding to get my real estate license in Virginia. I was in my early 20s, and I was still wanting to search and explore and see different areas of the country. And so I got my license. I did it for about 6 months. I never felt comfortable because everyone I was working with was probably my age now or older. and I didn't have any experience as a homeowner, and I had this itch to live somewhere else. And so I did it for about 6 to 8 months, and then I had friends from college who were living out in San Francisco. My best friend in college, his mother had a house out there, so he had his then girlfriend, who's now his wife, and another guy that he went to high school with were living out there. I went out and visited, ended up moving out west, had a great experience, lived out there for about a year, and then ended up eventually working my way back to the East Coast, and I found Charlotte because I had a friend who was a roommate in Richmond right after I graduated from college who lived here. And we're still great friends. He was actually best man at my wedding.
Wow.
So I came back here, and then after getting married, I was like, you know, I got to figure out what I want to do with my life. What do I want to do with my career? And I started noticing real estate signs up everywhere. And you've heard of the reticular activating system where you're tuned in. So I was like, maybe that's a sign that I need to get back into real estate. So I ended up getting my real estate license. I've been a realtor in North and South Carolina now for about 10 years. It'll be 10 years in September of this year. And it's been a profession where I've been able to make an impact on people's lives, helping them with, you know, one of their biggest purchases they're going to make. But not only the purchase side, it's people that are relocating here from different areas, helping them find for a better life for them and their families, and helping them find the place that's going to be their home. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. But then I also love the marketing and creative part of it. So that goes back to my writing and my wanting to create. So that's a little background on me. I hope that's informative.
Yeah. I love how those pieces and those dot connects. That's why I love this question so much, because you always find that through line and how those dot connect. And for me, one of the biggest takeaways from that story is this idea that I share with people all the time in my personal and professional life. This idea that if you make your purpose something that transcends your profession or transcend the product or the service that you sell, then you can always find different expression of that same thing, right? So, and what I mean by that is, if you decide that your purpose in life is to be a realtor, then if for some reason you can no longer be a realtor, then you have lost your purpose.
Right.
But if your purpose is to make an impact, then as you so clearly illustrated, you can do it working for a senator, you can do it working as a coach, you can do it working as a realtor.
Yeah.
Because that thing transcends the vessel or the tool that you are currently using for it to come to life. So I really, really love that about the story.
Well, and one other thing too is, so I live in the Waxhaw area. We're right on the state line, Waxhaw Indian Land. But when we first moved to the area, I got involved in the Waxhaw Business Association because I wanted to network and get to know other people. Well, I was there after about 1 or 2. We have a monthly meeting. After the first month or two, I decided, well, I should get involved. So I spoke with their leadership and came on to help out with their marketing and or their recruitment of membership. So I did that for a couple of months, and then we had a board meeting, about a month or two before the end of the year, and the outgoing president asked me if I wanted to continue to volunteer on the board the next year. I said yes, and she said, "What do you think about being president?" I was taken aback. Like, what do you mean? I just joined. Well, you know, I think you'd be good at it. So I took it. That was a huge leap of faith. So I had no idea what I was getting into. And I ended up putting other people around me who knew more, had been part of this group and knew more about it. So that ended up being a great experience. And through that, I really learned to have an appreciation for small local businesses. You know, your mom and pop shops, not just your big department stores, but your downtown Main Street stores that you can walk into, whether they're restaurants or retail shops. And I really got to know the business owners. So that became a passion of mine as well. That eventually led me to creating videos and content where I highlight and promote those businesses. And that eventually led to a brand that I created called THE.CLT.LIFE, which is sort of an all-encompassing thing of everything that I do. So I have aspects of the CLT life that are to support and promote small businesses. I have aspects of the CLT life that's letting people know about different things to do in different communities in and around Charlotte. And then obviously I have the real estate aspect where I'm working one-on-one with my clients.
Yeah. No, that's great. You mentioned accepting the position on that board as the president of the board as a leap of
Yes.
faith. Like when you think about taking leaps of faith, like is that the main one that comes to mind? Like what is in your mind the biggest leap of faith you've taken to date?
Biggest leap of faith? Probably getting married, starting a family. My wife and I, we first met. It's funny, when I first moved to Charlotte, all my friends were single. I went back home to Virginia for about a year and a half, and I came back. All my friends were married.
Oh, wow.
In that time frame. So I came back and I was working a job. I was actually working in wireless sales, and I wasn't meeting anyone. So this was before Tinder and all that, but it was when Match was out. So my wife and I actually met online, but not on our cell phones. It was on an actual computer. That's how we were first introduced, and we had all these stories where our lives were like almost intersecting. We knew people in common. I went to my best friend that I told you about earlier. I made a dentist appointment, and his dad's fraternity brother was a dentist. So I was like, hey, I'll go see you. Well, the receptionist there was very nice. We had a nice conversation. Turned out it was my wife's aunt, who we're very close with them now. We put that together like 2 weeks later, and that happened within about a week of our first date. I also had a housemate, and this guy came and moved in about a week after I moved in, and I was describing him to Lauren, and she said, is his name Kevin? I said, yeah, how did you know? Oh, that's my best friend's cousin. I just saw him and on the north side of Charlotte, up at University area, and this was down in Seal Creek. And we had like family first names and things that were like the same or very similar, and we found out we had very similar family values and family structures. And I'm very close with her family. She's very close with my parents as well. So we came together that way, and then we ended up getting married. We both always loved children, always wanted to start a family of our own. And this is vulnerability too. So this is something else that I learned about being vulnerable. When I share my story, there's always other people who can relate to it. So we had a hard time getting pregnant. So the first year, we went by and we weren't pregnant. So we went to fertility doctors. We ended up going to specialists to help us out, and we ended up doing like in vitro. And she actually got pregnant once, but we ended up having a miscarriage. We found out that we were twins, then found out that a week later that we weren't having twins. So that was really hard. But we still had the strong desire to start a family. And for a while in the back of our minds had been the idea of adoption. And so once we kind of went through all the different other options to try to have children of our own, we jumped into the adoption world. And that was a bit of a struggle too, but eventually we found our way to someone, an adoption attorney, who was able to help us find our son's biological mother. And that was a huge leap of faith, doing that as well. And then, raising him, and he's 2 years and 3 months old now. And it's been just an awesome learning experience.
Yeah, there is so much power in being vulnerable, and I'm so appreciative and so grateful for you to entrust me and the audience with that story. I feel like every leap of faith, big or small, have in common that it comes with fear. It comes with a story in our mind about the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's our minds and our brains defense mechanism trying to keep us safe from doing something that it perceives to be threatening to our life, to our ego, to our livelihood. So what's your relationship with fear these days? It's something that evolves over time, but what's your relationship with fear?
I think it's changed a little bit. When I think of fear, I guess I kind of think of two things come to mind. One is risk-taking. The other one is my own mortality, which seems kind of gruesome, but it's also kind of liberating as well. So the first one, it's being a parent. there's more responsibility to, you know, take care, to be a provider, and to want to have stability. So in real estate, and probably any sales position, when you're an independent contractor, you're working on your own, there's always, you know, the risk of having ups and downs. You know, perhaps even like, I know when you started your own business, I'm sure it's not just smooth sailing right off the start. So
No.
so sometimes there's fear in that, when it's like, okay, where's the next transaction coming from? So sometimes, you know, it can be hard, and you kind of look to see, okay, are there other options, other things that can provide more stability? So I've found other additional opportunities in addition to real estate. I've started to look at even additional opportunities to help to do stuff that I love and that I'm good at, to help other people. And one thing that I found is through small business support. So whether it's, you know, creating that content. I've also just partnered up recently with a merchant services company that's locally owned. So I'm going to be providing merchant services to small business owners.
That's cool.
So giving them different solutions where I'm like the local guy. So it's like POS and credit card processing type things. But one of the things that I can offer differently than what other people can do is two things. One, most of the reps work for a company. They're an employee. I'm not an employee. I'm an independent contractor, so it's my business. And the other thing is I have an avenue to promote those businesses. So, you know, not only do I want to put my system in there, but I want them to do well. And hey, we can create some great content that's going to have an audience. So that's on the professional side. The other thing with the mortality. So I'm 44 years old now. So I started thinking. I decided. I don't know if "decided" is the right word, but I came up with the idea that like 44, 45, that's halftime. You know, when I reach 45, I'm at halftime. And then if I get past 90, that's overtime. So, and hopefully the game keeps on going into like double and triple overtime. But I look back now and I see that, okay, 20 years ago I was 25, let's say. So I'll be 45 in a couple months. 20 years ago I was 25. In 20 more years I'll be 65. 20 more years after that, God willing, I'll be 85 years old. So, so I think that maybe I used to fear that, kind of fear the end. Now I look at it and see that, you know, the clock is ticking, but it's a motivator as well. You know, and it's more so to have more experiences, especially being a parent now. There's all these things I want to do, you know, with my family and with and for my son. These experiences that I want to have, to where my mindset as far as my mindset is more on experiences and family as opposed to you know, possessions and things like that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you in that idea of using our own mortality as a way to gain perspective. I think once you understand just how that we all have an expiration date, and that unfortunately we don't even know when it's going to be. I think it just puts things in perspective. When you are going through struggle, you understand that if somebody called you and told you that somebody that you love had passed, like, this thing you are dealing with will just pale in comparison with the hurt and how challenging that thing will be. So yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you in that it offers just clarity, perspective, and a level of sobriety that can fuel our passion and can make us be braver when at times we might feel reluctant to take a leap of faith.
That's a great way to describe it, that level of sobriety. It's just clear thinking, clear vision, and just awareness. And having this conversation with you right now is like therapy for me.
I love it
because it makes me think about that even more. There was a guy, I can't think of his name, but just recently, this person who passed, and I see friends like posting about their siblings, you know, unexpectedly passing. Dave, I can't think of his last name, but his former wife wrote "Girl, Wash Your Face," if you know what I'm talking about. So he joined the company, and he was like a they had like a motivational series, podcast. They would do seminars, all these things. He was a big executive at Disney World.
Wow.
He was 47 years old, like super fit. Like part of his brand was he runs, he exercises, he meditates, he takes great care of himself. And he passed away in his sleep. I think he had an ongoing heart condition.
Wow.
That's why he's like 47 years old, and this guy, it really is sobering when you get closer to that age. So I'm like, I don't know when my last day is going to be, and I really hope it's no time soon. But you want to, live each day to the fullest, knowing that you don't really know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think our most recent reminder of the fragility of time and life is COVID, right?
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
COVID was
it's like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, COVID was a great awakening and a great reminder. And I think COVID was certainly a driver for me to leave my full-time employment and start my business, because it forced me to put my life into perspective and to take a new look at some of the dreams that I had put up the shelf and to dust them off, because I realized that I was taking time for granted, that maybe I wouldn't be afforded the luxury of the time that I thought I had.
Exactly. Yeah. Another short story too. So my father-in-law, he unfortunately passed a few years ago, but when we look back in hindsight, it happened just a few months before COVID began. And looking back, it's like, okay, with the timing of it, if this illness was going to take his life anyway, we were actually blessed for it to happen before COVID began, because we had 8 people in the room that were with him right there at the very end. And I also remember when he first got sick, he was in the hospital for about a month until he passed. But the first couple of times going to visit, I remember walking in there and seeing elderly people usually that were coming in and were having a hard time getting around. And I remember feeling this gratitude, this profound gratitude for my body.
Yeah.
And that I have the ability to, I might not run and jump as fast as I used to, but I can still run and jump and exercise, and I can get on the ground and roll around and roughhouse my son and do all those things. So, yeah. Put things in perspective.
Yeah. So I think following that same line, I think more and more people are thinking about starting their own business, going on their own, having a side hustle. And I think becoming a realtor is one of those things that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I feel like has just boomed in popularity because of the kind of flexibility, seeming freedom, and ability to support yourself and your family that it provides. So what would be your advice for someone who is thinking about this idea, entertaining the idea, but isn't quite ready to take a leap of faith or isn't quite sure they can make it happen? What would be your advice to someone who really wants to jump and do what you do?
Well, first off, if they can, have some sort of a support system. It's not as easy as you think. When I first started, I was working in wireless, and I went from full-time to part-time so I could do real estate as well. But my real estate business didn't really take off until I had to take a leap of faith. I was waiting on this one closing to come, and my wife and I decided, okay, when we have this much saved up, then you can take the jump and go full-time. And I think I ended up jumping about 2 weeks before that one closed, and it did close, but that was that leap of faith. So I think to be really successful, you really do have to commit to it. I do know some agents that have other full-time jobs and do this as well. But I think to really grow a big and thriving business, you really have to be able to commit to it. You need to let everybody know. You can't be bashful. You need to let everybody know that you're in real estate, but to let them know that you're here to help them. So one thing is working your network. Like if you have a network or a sphere of influence, people that are in your database, friends, family, coworkers, people you really want to focus on them, and you want to focus on providing value to them. It's not all about just asking, hey, you need to buy or sell a house, or hey, who do you know who needs to buy or sell a house? Because there's so many of us now, everybody knows a realtor, right? And the other thing too is most people aren't buying, unless you're an investor, you're not buying and selling real estate continuously. It's something that you do once every several years. So I am actually changing my focus right now. When I ask people for referrals, I'm not only asking, hey, do you have any real estate need, or who do you know that's planning on buying or selling a house? I want to know people in their network. I want to know 5 quality people that you know, that you think are good, is a good person, somebody that I should know, somebody who should know me, that I can provide value to, because one of these days they are going to end up buying or selling a home, but also they may know somebody in their network. So everybody in your network knows anywhere from 200 to 500 other people, right?
Yeah.
So the more that I can just expand my network and get to know other, quality people. When I say quality people, I mean, just nice people who aren't rude, people who don't have, bad attitudes. I want to meet people who are going to be pleasant to work with, who I'm going to get along with, because that's another thing is everyone is not meant to work with everyone else. And one realtor gave me some sage advice long ago, and he said, no bad business. And no is spelled 2 ways. N-O, like say no to bad business, and then K-N-O-W, know it, recognize it.
Right.
And I've had some transactions that and I'm pretty easy to get along with, but I've had some transactions that were pretty rough and just from a standpoint of butting heads with my clients, and I can look back now and I can see the warning signs when, you know what, maybe it's best if I refer you to someone else to work with. We might not be the best fit. So advice for other agents, I would say patience and persistence. Education is huge. But I have three big business values when I work with anybody in real estate. And I always tell my clients and prospective clients this. It's education, communication, and coordination. So education means I'm going to be educated, and I'm going to educate you as my client. Before we get into the process, I'm going to explain how things are going to go, so you have a familiarity once we get into it. So once we jump into the game and we're ready to write an offer, or we start receiving offers, you already know, what the contract is going to look like. I've already explained it. And you might not remember every detail of it, but I've taught you already, so I can go back and say, hey, remember, yada, yada. We've talked about this before, so there's that level of familiarity. And then the communication, you got to be able to communicate clearly with your clients, whether you have good news or bad news. And also you need to be able to work with and cooperate and communicate with the other agents on the other side of the transaction.
Yeah.
And then coordinating is just getting from point A to B to C. So if you have a listing, from the time you list the house, all the preparation, presenting it professionally, receiving offers, and then navigating from the time you're under contract to closing. There's a lot of steps. I actually use a professional transaction coordinator that helps me along the way, so I can oversee it and kind of be like the CEO of the business and know what's going on. But I have someone who helps me out with the administrative side as far as the paperwork. So I would say from that standpoint, some people might be very good at that, but not as good as the marketing. So focus and go deep on what you're really good at and get help for the other stuff. Like as a realtor, when you first come into the business, you think you have to do every single part of the job. You don't have to do every single part of the job. Focus on what you do best and have a team that supports you to help you do the rest.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question, but I wanted to touch on something that you said earlier in your response. This idea that when you recognize bad business, you essentially refer the person out. And I thought it was a very insightful and even empathetic way to think about it. Because I feel like for most people, the idea that this is not working out, we usually take it personally, and it's a personal indictment on the person and the character and the value and all that. But what I heard you say was that this is just not a good fit. I'm assuming the best in this human being and recognizing that I am not for everyone, and that this relationship simply isn't working without this being a judgment judgment on the person and who they are and what they stand for. I thought that was a really, really powerful piece. That
That's
if
a
you are
learned.
this,
That's a
yeah,
learned skill. That's not something that comes easy to me because by nature, I'm a people pleaser. I want people to like me, and I've worked with people where it just wasn't a good fit. One quick example: I had some buyers who were from out of state. They found me online. We connected, and they always wanted to speak late in the evening when it was part of our son's bedtime routine, and they didn't like that, and I had to kind of set boundaries. And then I remember they were looking on the other side of town, like an hour away. I went and did some virtual showings for them. And then I had another agent who was helping me do showings, and they were like, no, if you can't do every single showing, then we just don't think it's a good fit. And coming into that, though, there was a warning because they told me they had worked with another agent, and they wanted to know, hey, if we don't work out, can we get out of this with no penalty? So those were all these warning signs. But I was like, hey, they want to buy a $600,000 house, I can help you out. But I really, I lost time and sleep over this when it would have been better off from the beginning to say, hey, let me put you in touch with so-and-so who works on that side of town. They'll be a better fit for you.
yeah.
And it's a struggle. I always think I can help everybody. So it is a struggle. And lots of times when I'm telling my wife the story, and she's like, that's not a good fit. And you can feel it. You can really feel it. The stress, the time, you can feel it when it's not right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am learning to honor that intuition a little bit more. I mean, I think when you are early in the business and you are still in survival mode, you have this inkling and this desperation even to just say yes to every opportunity that comes your way. But to your point, every single time your intuition is telling you that there's something here, I cannot put it into words because that part of our soul or brain doesn't really have language, but you can feel it, you can sense it. And if you learn to trust your intuition, then over time you realize that every time you've gone against that feeling, you've regretted doing it.
Every single time. And you don't want to work from a sense of desperation. That's why I said having some sort of a safety net, whether it's savings or a family member or spouse or some kind of way, or maybe it is still having another job, working bartending or working at a restaurant or a side hustle, whatever else. Those things are important because you don't want to work from a state of desperation when you're helping someone, because then you're not giving them good advice.
Yes.
So one of the things as a realtor, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our client, meaning that we have to look out in their best interest over our best interest. So if I'm only thinking about, man, I need to make this sale so I can pay my mortgage or my rent this month, then you're going to be pushing somebody towards something and maybe not giving them the best advice. So you want to be able to get your business hopefully to a point where you can give advice that is just in your client's best interest. And I know that, like I was saying earlier, I know I can't make anybody, I have the attitude that I can't make anybody buy or sell a house or want to sell a house. When they come to me, they already have to know that, hey, we want to move, we want to buy a house. What I can do is provide value and information along the way. And so hopefully when they do make that decision, then they say, hey, Jimmy, he knows what's going on. I can tell, like, he takes care of his clients. He provides value and information all the time. Let's give him a call. We like that guy.
Yeah. I mean, the best salespeople don't sell, right? They educate, they facilitate. They are facilitators more than anything else. And I became a better marketer the day I stumbled upon this idea of being a fiduciary. There is this marketing guy who has this principle, and he's borrowed it from professions like yours that have a fiduciary responsibility to their client. And he was just saying that in marketing and in business, although we are not legally bound to do what is in the best interest of clients, we should borrow that idea from those professions that have a legal fiduciary duty, because I think it completely transforms and shifts your perspective and your approach to business and marketing. And it's been true in my case. And I think that idea really has guided me and has shaped the way I think about business, the way I think about marketing. And ultimately, that's the reason. If you follow me for 24 hours, then you're probably going to hear me talk about empathy like 46 times in 24 hours.
That's true.
And
think of you, couple things I think. One is empathy, because you talk about empathy so much. And then storytelling, because Grio is storytelling, right?
Absolutely.
A storyteller. So those are the two things I think about. You know, if someone said, describe Junior Nyemb, I would say empathy, storyteller, and Hall of Fame soccer player.
There we go. I should just borrow this and make it my my short elevator pitch now. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about, I know buying and selling a house can be and often is a very, very emotional decision, right? Because people are not really buying or selling their house, they're selling their home, they're selling or they're buying a place that will eventually become their home, and it comes with so much emotional burden. So how do you navigate and help them navigate that emotional aspect of buying or selling?
So one thing to keep in mind is, and this is a big reason why we have realtors, is we get to be the non-emotional, non-passionate, liaisons or go-betweens. So one big thing as far as navigating, helping them go through the transaction, is to try not to get upset or try not to get emotional about it in my dealings with the other agent, because I want to keep it. You don't want the emotions from both sides to get together and to clash. And then I just try to remind them, what the goal is, what the end thing is. So many people feel like they have to win. It's always funny to me now when I think about it, when, let's say I have a client and they just feel like they have to win. They have to get the upper hand on the other client. When at the end of the day, the goal is to whether it's selling your house or to get a home, is to complete that transaction. And 3 months from now, 6 months from now, you're not going to be thinking about, oh man, I could have gotten $2,000 more out of that, or I should have had them fix this thing right here. Because at that point, it's your home. You're not thinking about that anymore. So I think the biggest thing is keeping the end goal in mind and keeping that in front of them and letting them know, preparing them as well. So let's say I'm working with a home buyer and we're about to have the home inspected. No matter if it's a brand new home or an older home, I always tell people, okay, so the inspection report is going to be about 80 pages. I don't care what house it is. If it's brand new, if we can walk in here and it doesn't look like it needs anything, A, the inspector is always going to find something. But B, most of that report is just informing you about the house. It's like the guidebook to your home, to your future home. And I do that to kind of ease their worries a little bit up front and let them know that, hey, it's to be expected, and we're going to find some things. And there's going to be a lot of little things that we probably shouldn't even worry about. They might find something that's a little bit more concerning, if it's like electrical or plumbing or structural. Okay, at that point, then we should look into it and address it. But still, it's not anything that we have to get upset about. It's something that through communication with the other party, we can learn more, find out, hey, is this actually an issue? And then come up with a solution for it. And usually that solution is asking them to fix it or getting some sort of a credit to end up, making all parties happy. Because at the end of the day, our goal is to get to the closing table and to hand over the keys. So I try to help them keep that perspective in mind. But I mean, for so many people, it is stressful. It's a big thing. You have all these things going on at the same time. One other thing that I try to get people to do too is to prepare in advance. So, like let's say if you're a home buyer as well, getting your pre-approval, getting all these things done in advance so that once it comes time once you're under contract, you can focus on packing and moving and things like that. So I try to take as much stuff off of the plate early on in the transaction, get that stuff done early on so they can focus on the actual move itself.
Yeah. Well, we are coming to the end of our conversation. I never can believe how fast this conversation go. But
Yeah.
I want to end on this question around taking a leap of faith.
Okay.
Like, what would you want to tell your son about taking a leap of faith?
So every single night, I'm going to get a little emotional talking about this, but every single night, and he's a little bit over 2, and I say, you're kind, you're kind, you're smart, you're brave, you're strong, you're capable, you are blessed, you are loved, and you can do all things through God. And sometimes there's other qualities and stuff that we bring up and that we say. But I want him to know and believe that the world is his oyster, that he can accomplish, anything that he wants to do if he really sets his mind to it. So I want him to see, I want to be an example for him when he sees me go out in the world, and in the way that I treat people, in the way that, people respect me for the way I've treated them and for what I do and professionally, and also being involved in the community. But those things right there, those values that I tell him every single night, and it's so cool because right now, like, he can say those things back to us. He's like, I am kind, I am smart, I am capable, I am blessed. He says these things back to me. So I want to, ingrain those beliefs in him, and not like self-confidence. Growing up, I've realized now, I think I had a fixed mindset, and the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Because I was told, I tested being gifted. They said, oh, Jim, I took these tests in 3rd grade. Oh, you're gifted. Like, oh, you're smarter than most of the other kids. And schoolwork came pretty easily to me up through high school. When I got to college, it was different because I didn't have to work as hard. So then I had to learn how to work harder and to be more disciplined. I realized now I had a fixed mindset that it should just be, oh, I'm good at this or I'm not good at that. I want to teach him to have a growth mindset, where it's more, you can if you really want this, you can work hard at it and you can accomplish what you want. But also to have that faith, and that's the part about I can do all things through God. What that means is, to me, when I think of that, I think of it's not all on me. It takes a lot of the burden and the pressure off. I'm just going to do my best and see what happens. And I want to teach them that, family and, those values are more important sometimes than just working hard and succeeding. So,
yeah. Well, if it's good advice for your 2-year-old, it's certainly terrific advice for us as well.
Exactly.
Jimmy, thank you so much for making the time. And I can assure you that as much as you want to be a model to your son for somebody who's kind, loving, and committed to making an impact and a difference in the world, you are certainly doing and achieving all those things. And I'm really, really grateful that our paths have crossed.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And same here. I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the past couple of years, and we need to get together at Brakeman's again sometime soon.
Let's do that. All right, man. Thank you for joining the live. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thanks, everybody.